or 3 years, some say as long as 7 years. It's not intelligence, at least, and I'm not on the Intelligence Committee, but what I read is that, and I have no classified information, is that it's not clear exactly when they will acquire those weapons. But clearly we cannot afford, in my view, for them to acquire them. But I think there's a lot of measures we could take in between the decision to go to war or take military action before we have to seriously consider that option. Thank you, sir.
Gary?
Yes, sir.
To the issue of partisanship that Tony raised, once upon a time there was tremendous bipartisan support for trade. And you know just as well as we do how critical trade is to the economic health of the valley.
He said economic, yeah, okay.
Economic health of the valley. I hadn't said anything controversial yet.
Turn off the mic.
Of course, we have a very poisoned environment, political environment, around the issue of trade. Thank you for your stalwart support of trade. How can we return to an era where both Democrats and Republicans support free trade policy, you know, in an era where clearly Lou Dobbs' demagoguery and other demagoguery, you know, from plenty of other folks has created, you know, a very difficult atmosphere?
I think the protectionism that you're seeing on the rise in the Congress of the United States has everything to do with the loss of manufacturing jobs and our failure to assist those workers who have been displaced. Now, my friends, we've got a strong economy, as you know. I don't have to tell anybody in this room. Unemployment is low, inflation is low, the stock market is booming, yet 70% of the American people think the country's on the wrong track. And that has a lot to do with their belief in the security of their future, whether they'll have Social Security, most importantly, whether they'll have health insurance. What if they lose their job? Every time they pick up the newspaper, they see where Detroit is laying off more and more workers. I'm told there's 100,000 homes in Michigan that people have walked away from. So the point is here that we have got to make sure that these displaced workers have another chance. Have another chance to be, rather than being laid off at the age of 35 or 40 or whatever it is. They were used to having their fathers and their forebears have a job, keep it, have health insurance and pension on retirement, et cetera, et cetera. Now this uncertainty is out there and it's legitimate. And we have 6 that I know of, federal programs for displaced workers. None of them work. Not a one of them works. So in my view, we've got to go to our community colleges, which is our strongest part of our education system, and say, here, design education and training programs for these people who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own because of the flight of manufacturing jobs overseas, and give them another chance to have a life and opportunity in America. Not too long ago, I met a guy from Utah that owned a trucking company, and a year or so ago they imposed very severe restrictions on how many hours a truck driver can drive. He had no truck drivers. So he went to the local community college and he said, here's the money. Educate and train truck drivers for me. He now has a steady supply of truck drivers. We have an unemployment insurance system that was designed for the 1950s when an economic downturn kept somebody out of a job for 2 or 3 months. And you can't, oh, by the way, the guy with the trucking, how long do you think it would have taken to design a federal program for that? 10 years, 20 years? You know, so the fact is we've got to, it's vital in America that we give these workers who are being displaced by this incredible transition that we're going through another opportunity to be part of America and have a bright future. Then we get into health insurance, and that is clearly the number one concern. When I have a town hall meeting in New Hampshire, first question or second question, health insurance. How am I going to have my health taken care of as I grow older, or if I'm displaced from my job? Right now we have a law where you can take your health insurance from one job to another. The problem is nobody can afford it when they're out of a job. So that's the challenge, in my view, domestically of the 21st century, is how we're going to adjust so that a great majority of Americans are able to take part in this incredible revolution that is taking place worldwide, and thank God led by America. Small postscript. How many Americans know that 50,000 Americans make a living off eBay today? Very few. But a lot of Americans read of the last 10 or 15 or 20,000 person layoff in Michigan at the automobile industry as it seems to be inexorably receding as part of the American economy. That's what, in my view, that we have to do.
Young man.
Hi, my name is Michael Yang. I'm an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, and I really admire your conviction and your just sticking to what you believe in. And I really think that you are the best qualified candidate for the presidency. And I would like to support you. In 2000, I was part of the Silicon Valley executives that supported George W. Bush. There was Floyd Kwame and John Chambers, Gregory Slayton, and a bunch of us got together and supported then Governor George W. Bush. How can I get involved? Is there any organization that you are planning that we could get involved to support you more fully over the next 12 or 16 months?
Thank you, Mike. Would you mind going with me wherever I go? Just for openers, maybe we could.
I thought he was with you.
Thank you, John Chambers.
You're not?
John Chambers is heavily engaged in my campaign, and I know you know him real well, and so I'll have him and others get in contact with you. I thank you, and I appreciate it, and I still have a great deal to learn about what goes on in this valley and valleys like it all over the country. And the fascinating thing to me in my service in the Commerce Committee was keeping up with the dramatic changes as they take place in the business that you're in. And one thing I've become convinced of is that regulation and laws very seldom have much to do with the reality of what's going on in Silicon Valley. To wit, the 1996 Telecommunications Act. Look at it and you'd think it it applies to another age, much less this one. Thank you, and we'll make sure we get in touch with
This
John
gentleman
Chambers.
over here.
Can I do two more, please? Since I'm just trying to, all I have to do is fly back and try to do the Lord's work in the city of Satan. So if I get back a little late, it's okay.
Senator, I'm Leonard Backus. China opens a new coal-powered electricity plant every week. What could you possibly do in the United States that would have any effect on reducing environment or atmospheric dust that would overcome any kind of thing that could happen overseas?
We have to convince the Chinese on this issue and a number of other issues where their self-interest lies. And their self-interest lies in becoming in part of some international treaty that has to do with the uniform addressing of greenhouse gas emissions. The Chinese are going to destroy their own country first, and then they're going to have a destructive effect on the world's climate as well. It is in their interest to take measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I didn't support the Kyoto Treaty without India and China, and I still don't. But it seems to me that we can appeal to both India and China's self-interest to join in another kind of international agreement which would then, in an effective way, address this issue. I think, I may be wrong, but I think China just passed us on, or are shortly going to, or just passed us in amount of greenhouse gas emissions as the number one emitter in the world. And I also believe, and I may be wrong, that some mercury problems we have here in California have come all the way from China. If there's ever an example of the global aspect of this issue, that certainly is on this issue. So if we get together as a planet and everybody gets behind doing something about this issue, I think it would be very hard